Hello, I'm Joe Lenton from Original Art Photography, and in this short video I want to show you a few tips that should help you with your posture and holding your camera to make sure that you're more likely to get sharp photos. If your camera's wobbling around, you need a faster shutter speed to keep things steady, and you risk losing some sharpness in your image if you're not careful. So a simple few things that you can check off in terms of how you stand when you're taking photos can help an enormous amount in giving good stability to your camera and giving you better photos overall. Okay, so what we're looking to avoid is too much wobbling about. So if you've got your feet very close together, there's a danger that if you do start to move, that can be accentuated quite a lot. It's better if you have your feet slightly apart and one foot a little bit in front of the other. If you bend your knees slightly too, then you're that much more anchored. It's easier for you to stay stable like that than it is if you're standing very much with your feet together. So feet slightly apart, one a little bit in front of the other. Go for whichever one works for you, whichever feels comfortable. A little bit of a bend there, and that gives you that stability in your legs. The next step is to think about your arms and your hands, how you're holding the camera. You can, with some cameras, hold things on either side because there is no lens at the front there for you to put your hand under. But if you've got a lens at the front, like on an SLR, you should really put your left hand underneath that and your right hand goes on the grip. So you've got your right hand on the grip, your left hand under the lens, and that supports it much better than if you're holding it at either end. If you're using a phone or certain types of camera, you might not have much choice about that, but it's normally better if you can get a little bit of support under the camera as well as using the grip on the edge there. That way your camera is more stable, more easy to control in small movements. The next thing to think about is your arms. If you have your arms out wide, then again, it's easy for things to move. You want to make yourself almost like a tripod really. You're trying to provide a solid base for your camera. So instead of having your arms out wide, bring your elbows in close to your chest. So our stance is going to be feet slightly apart, one foot slightly in front of the other, bend your legs a little bit, bring your elbows in, one hand under the lens, one hand on the grip, and bring the camera up to your eye level. And there you'll have a much more stable base for taking your photos. You can still use the screen on the back if you wish. I would suggest, if possible, holding it the same sort of way to give yourself a good solid anchor, because otherwise if you're wobbling around you're likely to miss the photo that you're after and possibly introduce some blur. So keep your framing nice and solid by having a good stance on there. And again, with your back, if you lean backwards or you lean forwards, you're introducing a little bit of lack of balance. You're putting yourself slightly off balance. So try and keep yourself pretty upright. Try not to lean forward unless you really need to. It's better to try and adjust your stance a little bit if you can. So keep yourself fairly upright and arms in by your sides. Keep everything quite tight like that. So from this angle, instead of standing there like this, what I would suggest is standing more like that. Gives you that control. But what about for shots when you're lower to the ground? Now what we all tend to do is to squat down. And one of the reasons we do that is so that we can get up more easily and just push off your feet straight back up. So you're down, squatted down like this, but you'll notice that most of the time when you try and squat down, you'll want to put a hand down to stabilize yourself. So you've then only got one hand for the camera. If you can manage to do it without stabilizing yourself with your hand, you're still going to be a bit wobbly. You're not going to be able to counter any slight movement. In fact, you're going to be very unbalanced like this. So it's best not to squat like that. It's best to stabilize it, and if the ground is dry enough, and if not, you can put a plastic bag under your knee, but I would suggest having one knee on the floor, one foot flat on the floor, and that way your body is not wobbling around. It's nice and stable. Then with your camera, hold it as before, one hand under the lens supporting that, one hand on the grip, and then put your elbow on the knee, on the leg that you've got up like that, and that gives you again that little bit more stability. Tuck the other elbow in to the side of your body and you've got a very stable
platform to shoot from, and you can just adjust your camera up and down a little bit. If need be, you can adjust your posture and lean in a bit, and you're a bit more stable. But trying to take a photo like this is a lot more stable than trying to do it like that. You'll just end up wobbling around and finding it very hard to keep what you want in the frame. So just to recap then, when you're standing, bit of gap between your legs, one slightly in front of the other, slightly bent knees, elbows in, and there we have our hold on the camera, one underneath, one on the grip. Okay, keep yourself as upright as you can, try not to lean in or back too much if you can help it. And then similarly for when you're on the ground, don't squat like that. One knee flat, 1 foot flat, elbows in, elbow on the leg, and there you have your lower shooting posture. If you use those sort of more stable shooting postures, you can get away with slower shutter speeds than you'd otherwise be able to, and you can keep your framing nice and steady, meaning that overall you're more likely to get a better image. So I hope you found these tips helpful. It will take a bit of practice to get used to them, but I think it's really worth it for the results. Thank you for watching. I'm Joe Lenton.